In some of those cases, it was still kind of run as a theocracy, but you had kings. These are civil laws for that time. No reasonable person reading the Bible would even pretend that those civil laws are argued that we should be trying to bring back those civil laws in any meaningful way. Jesus did not even call for the return of these civil laws in many cases, because at that time Rome was in charge. That's not even how you see the New Testament reads in any way, shape, or form. So just understand, civil law, you have civil law and you have moral law. The moral law are the general rules about morality, and those are typically repeated somewhere in the New Testament, and they don't call for the killing of anyone for violating those moral laws, okay? The civil laws did. Now, I think most Christians understand that. That's why you don't want church and state to merge. Church and state merging always leads to people dying. And I think that's a horrible thing. Those verses are still difficult, but we do have to draw, it's just being fair with the text. Like, you can criticize it all day, but you still have to be fair with the criticism. And the criticism is that's a civil law for Israel. But it is there, and some Christians don't even know it's there. That's Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 20 through 21. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 1. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 1. He who is emasculated by crushing or mutilation shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. He who is emasculated by crushing or mutilation shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 1. I don't want to go into great detail about this verse, okay? Because I don't know who's listening, and I don't know who may have children nearby. I would just challenge you to do a little reading on what's being talked about here. It's a certain part of the male anatomy, and if something is not right there, well, that person was not to enter the assembly of the Lord. And that raises some very interesting questions. That's a hard passage to deal with. I will say Deuteronomy 23:1 is a passage that requires. And again, you can just be, oh, look, this is a foolish verse. Christians are stupid. You could approach it that way, but Christians need to know it's there and have to struggle with it. And two, those who just use it to mocking, everyone needs to stop and go, okay, let's do this. What in the world is going on? Deuteronomy 23:1, what is going on? All right, so if a certain part of the body has been emasculated, removed, or if it's been injured, God doesn't accept that worship? God only accepts worship from people where certain parts of their body is in good condition? There's something historical context there going on that we have to enter into. That's why studying the Bible is important, and why, any historical document. Whenever you jump into any historical document, you can find all kinds of shocking things. You got to try to understand what was going on. Deuteronomy 23:1 requires a little bit of work. I bet you if you pick up 4 or 5 commentaries, you can get some ideas. Next, Deuteronomy 25, verses 11 through 12. Deuteronomy 25, verses 11 through 12. If 2 men fight together, and the wife of one draws near to rescue her husband from the hand of the one attacking him, and puts out her hand and seizes him by the genitals, that's a nice way of putting it, then you shall cut off her hand. Your eyes shall not pity her. So 2 men are fighting. The woman steps in to defend her man. She ends up grabbing the other man by the genitalia, right? And rather than discipline the man for fighting in the first place, the proper response in this case is to cut off the woman's hand. That's Deuteronomy 25, 11 through 12. You should know that that's there. There's a lot going on there. I don't even know. All right. Next, Leviticus 21, 18 through 19. I want to try to finish through all of these. Leviticus 21, 18 through 19. For any man who has a defect shall not approach a man blind or lame, who has a marred face or any limb too long, a man who has a broken foot or a broken hand, or is a hunchback or a dwarf, or a man who has a defect in his eye or a scab, or is a eunuch. This is Leviticus 21:18 through 19. This is an interesting verse. They say this in the article: to approach God, you apparently had to be a perfect male specimen with working private parts. Everybody else could not approach him. Well, that's an interesting passage, Leviticus 21:18 through 19. I would challenge you, context there is it may be important. There were specific rules, especially for the priest, a Levitical priest, who could serve as a priest and who could not serve as a priest. There could have been reasons why. Again, historical context and textual context there is important. But that's Leviticus 21:18 through 19. Leviticus 20, verse 9. For everyone who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood shall be upon him. Leviticus 20, verse 9. Now, most Christians know this verse exists because it's usually talked about, at least, sometimes in church in a more of a joking manner, which is sometimes disturbing because it is calling for, hey, if a kid cursed his mom, if his parents out, he dies. Now, we can joke about it because we're not experiencing it, but if you live during that time and a kid cursed out a parent and then next thing you know, the kid's being killed, I don't know if it'd be such a joking manner, but I think some Christians, and we know this passage exists. Again, this is a part of the civil law of Israel, and well, we could talk all day about it. That's Leviticus chapter 20, verse 9. How many more do I have here? I got 2 to go. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 23 through 24. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 23 to 24. Oh, man. Now this one, all Christians know this one. I don't think there's a Christian who doesn't know. Some of those other ones, I think a lot of Christians, they kind of know there's things like that in the Bible, but they're not really, it's not talked or preached. Leviticus 20, verse 9 is mentioned in a lot of sermons, and 2 Kings 2, 23, 24 is mentioned in all kinds of sermons. Let me read it. Then he went up from there to Bethel, and as he was going up the road, some youths came from the city and mocked him and said, "Go up, you bald head! Go up, you bald head!" So he turned around and looked at them and pronounced a curse on them in the name of the Lord, and 2 female bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the youths. So now what they're going to argue is the contradiction here. Wait, in Leviticus, if you had some kind of defect, you couldn't worship God or you couldn't approach God. But, and this is how they state it, even though God doesn't want people to worship him who are blind in one eye or have a limb too long or have, some skin, a rash on the skin, he's a big fan of bald men. These youths learned that lesson the hard way. Bald men shall not be mocked, especially when the bald man is a prophet. And when God cannot get children stoned or mauled by bears, he just pronounces blessings on those who bash babies' heads against rocks. Now, it's quoting a different verse, but you get the idea. They're kind of making a little mockery here. Again, these kids mock the prophet. They're destroyed. Now, from a non-Christian perspective, again, this seems horrible and wrong. And you have to respect the fact that people would read this. But if you're a Christian, your presupposition is that whatever I find here, no matter how appalling or horrible I may feel that it is, that I just accept it because, well, it's there. I think we can ask difficult questions and struggle with it. What is going on? Is there some historical precedent here about why these kids would be, why he would pronounce a curse and God would send a bear and kill all of these kids? Why? Again, 2 Kings 2, 23 to 24. Again, these are verses that are not taught in the average church, and most churches don't want to teach these things from the pulpit or struggle with them. And then the very famous one, Psalm 137, verse 9. Psalm 137, verse 9, they alluded to this in the comment in the last for the last verse. This one, I think most Christians have struggled with this one to some level. It's been talked about a lot. Psalm 137, verse 9. Happy the one who takes and dashes your little ones against the rock. Psalm 137, verse 9, happy the one who takes and dashes your little ones against the rock. All right? And they want to try to drive this point home. Imagine a soldier coming home from a day of baby smashing. His wife greets him at the door with a kiss. So how was your day, honey? How How was your day, honey? She says. Great. God was really at work with me today. I got to smash babies against a rock wall. We all praised God as we did it. The Spirit was really moving. I must have killed 10 or 12, but that Joash, he got over 20. He's a beast. The best part is that now we're going to be blessed because all the babies we killed. I'm standing on the promises of God. Now, again, you may not like the mocking tone in that, but Psalm 137 verse 9, you've got to try to figure out. Now, again, please note that when you give these Bible verses, they're not providing any context. They're not providing you anything. You have to go figure out what is going on in Psalm 137. Another thing you have to realize, Psalm 137 is what kind of literature? It's poetry, right? So what's being stated here? What's being called for here? What's being celebrated here? What's it referencing? Who's going to be blessed for bashing the little ones against the rock? What is happening here? We need more context than just saying, "Hey, the Bible says, blessed is the man who smashes a baby's heads against a rock." I mean, you got to be fair. You got to be fair. Is all I'm saying. But you need to know all of them. So let's go through these one more time. All right, go through these one more time. Make sure, yes, making sure we're still live because I had that window down. All right, let's go through these again. This article is called, and I will be posting this article in the Sermon and Bible Study Notes section on the VBC 66 app. I will be posting this article on the Sermon and Bible Study Notes section of the VBC 66 app, so you'll have all these articles. There are 1,208 comments on this article. I have not viewed the comments. I bet you they're all over the place. Here's what's probably sad. Probably there are some Christians who are commenting under this article, and I bet you they're probably saying some of the most outlandish things and demonstrating, in many cases, a very poor grasp on how to interpret the scriptures. That's my experience. I could be wrong, but I challenge you to look at the comments as well. But here we are. Here are the verses that they give. Ready? Number one, this is how they set this. I call the following verses troubling text, atheist maker verses. These are verses that do not point people to God, but instead lead people away from Him. Here are a few of the more blatant atheist maker verses. Genesis 19:8, Exodus 21:20 through 21, Leviticus 25:44 through 45, 1 Peter 2:18, Deuteronomy 22:20 through 21, Deuteronomy 23:1, Deuteronomy 25:11 through 12, Leviticus 21:18 through 19, Leviticus chapter 20 verse 9, 2 Kings 2:23 to 24, and Psalm 137 verse 9. All right. Now, how should we respond to them? How should we respond to them? Well, here's what we have to do. I'll just give you some basic ideas. The first thing that this is how all Christians should respond to these verses. Teach them. Read them. Study them. Right? Preach them. Deal with them. Don't hide from them. Don't run from them. Acknowledge they're in the Bible. Struggle with them. And don't just give, little simple answers. Well, some people believe the Bible, teaches slavery, but slavery was practiced back then. Okay, let's move on. And you're like, whoa. There's a lot of things we have to consider here, right? We got to make sure that our consideration and handling of this text is still and is consistent with the doctrine of inspiration. We got to make sure we understand that. But the first approach is we have to study them. We have to deal with them. Challenge people. Give people in your church. Here's some difficult texts. Go work on them. Right? Give them the skills to study the text. How to look up context. How to determine literature style. Give them hermeneutical methods to use. Don't be afraid of going, guys, I don't really know. Pastors should not be afraid to stand behind the pulpit and go, guys, I don't really have a good answer for this text. Let's just accept that. Let's accept that. So number one, we have to deal with the text. We have to deal with them. All right. I just think that's number one. We have to deal with them. Number two, do not, and this goes right along with number one, do not ignore them and hide from them. Don't ignore them and don't hide from them. Number